The future, a world where the quest for truth has ended.
Do you believe in the supernatural, Mr. Vandarius?
Surprise! The Shader will bring hell to Earth for thousands of years. Shock Division, kill them all!
Spirit Blade, a full cast audio drama. Download the Legacy Edition of Spirit Blade for free at spiritblade.com.
Hey guys, Pater Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, continuing my celebration of UN-E3 2020. This time I took a look at the video that went up live this morning from the YouTube channel The Game Awards, owned and run by Jeff Keighley of The Game Awards. And this video was titled Unreal Engine 5 Reveal, Summer Game Fest, PlayStation 5 First Gameplay. Now, you know, that the word gameplay, I guess it's at least about as appropriate as Xbox and Ubisoft used it recently in their event. Maybe more so. I mean, there's lots of caveats. You can argue it, you know, either way. But anyway, this was an 8-minute tech demo featuring live, I guess you would call it gameplay, recorded directly from a PlayStation 5 development kit. They just put an HDMI cable into the back. There was someone that was actually using a controller and playing this, what we saw in the demo. And so it was this little mini game, but built just to be a demo. It's not part of a larger project in the works, as far as they mentioned. In fact, they seem to be emphatic at least a couple times it was just a tech demo. Sony was, it was running off of a PlayStation 5 development kit, and Sony was certainly, I would say, featured by word of mouth. It was, it was a Sony symbol buttons that were coming up, in the demo when you saw like the user interface, and Sony was the only one that was mentioned as far as like where this demo, what this demo was running on. So I would say they were preferred in terms of the way that people talked about next gen, but only in the amount that they were mentioned, I should say, because Jeff Keighley did ask, and I was grateful for this later on in the interview. He asked how this engine will perform on other platforms, including PC, and he mentioned Xbox Series X. As the most that was said about the PlayStation 5 in comparison to any of their platforms is that Tim Sweeney, the head of what are they called, Epic Games, and who also owns the Unreal Engine, said of the PlayStation 5 that it has better specs than high-end PCs, but he didn't quite come out and say, it's better than Xbox One, and in fact, or Xbox Series X, I should say. And in fact, when kind of cornered on that issue a little bit, he said, "Well, we love all our babies, So we're not picking favorites, And there was no Sony rep involved, and so even though Sony was featured some more, I didn't feel like they were. This was a major deal. There was probably some money passed around that led to Sony being the featured console that this demo was played on, but probably not enough money to really make it a Sony event, Anyway, when talking about this engine, both after the demo and during it, they emphasized that the demo allows for the use of movie quality or film quality assets. So if there's going to be like a car or a statue or some kind of object in there, that this engine can handle the same fidelity of digital asset as they would use when making movies. And Unreal Engine 4 has been used, I think it is being used, to do some film work as well. So it's not an engine that's just been used for video games in the past. And so this engine is also designed for use in film, but what they made a point of saying is now you won't necessarily have to have like two different quality assets to plug into a film project and then a downgraded one that you're going to plug into a game project. That it's going to be able to use both of those kinds of quality assets in terms of the fidelity. And it certainly looked nice, when I looked at the environment and ignored camera movement and the character that was being controlled in third person, I could see this as being part of, a special effects sequence in in a movie, but whenever the camera would move, there was something about, there's something about the way a camera controlled by a player moves compared to a camera that's artistically controlled or pre-programmed, in a movie. And likewise, huge differences between an actual actor walking around and a digital character walking around. Even in movies, I'm cursed to be able to pick out digital trickery when it comes to mimicking living things. But I do think that the environments looked great, and the fidelity was really good. Now, I didn't see a huge difference because I was watching it on a 1080p monitor, also watching on YouTube where there's a little bit of pixelation that's going to pop up every now and then, and so I can't, I'm sure, appreciate the fidelity for what it is, but it didn't seem like this huge leap forward, and I doubt it would even if I had an 8K monitor that I was watching on, or 4K or whatever the crap. Tim Sweeney, of note, again, head of Epic Games, said in the context of this new engine that the days of loading screens are over. He was also talking in terms of the new consoles as well. The days of loading screens are over. Pop-up in games has ended. So in a video game, when you're playing and a texture looks blurry for a second and then suddenly it snaps into clarity, that's because the game is trying to catch up and load the imagery into the environment, But with the new consoles, that's apparently going to be done. We will see. I don't know. I have my questions, but I'm not a tech head, and so maybe it is an easier proposition or an easier idea to settle into than I think it is. Lighting was really a major element that was featured in this demo, and what they talked about is how lighting is not baked in. It doesn't have to be baked in, and in current games, most of the time, you have lighting that's kind of like preset and baked into how the game is being presented to you, and it's really going to take a lot of work and reworking to, switch over to, say, like a night cycle, or, or dramatically change up the lighting in the environment. But what they were getting at here was that lighting can be changed much more on the fly, and so developers are going to have a lot more freedom to bring multiple light sources into an environment. Like when you're exploring a dungeon, they said that a candle that you place in a room, if the dungeon is curving, it's going to, that light is going to be sent around the corner. And I assume this is referring to like the big ray tracing buzz phrase that's been floated around a lot in recent months, and it did look cool. I did, I think, notice a difference, especially the second time I watched it, with when they would adjust the lighting sources, where it was coming from, or when parts of the cavern would break away above and suddenly light would break through, and it would be manipulated depending on like the rocks that were also falling and casting shadows momentarily as they fell from the ceiling of the cavern down to the floor, and different things like that. So it looks like with this engine there's going to be a lot more potential for a world to not just like look sharper, but to seem more real and lived in, like an actual physical environment is going to respond to changes in the environment, just more moving parts, if that makes sense, in the simulation of the world, more systems and more fleshed out worlds. And that interests me a whole lot more than having merely sharper picture or, better colors and more varied colors and stuff like that. As I said, the demo didn't feature significantly better character animation. In fact, close-ups of the character's face looked very, disproportionate, extra big eyes, looked kind of a little cartoony. But the idea of improved character animation was brought up in their discussion afterward as part of what this engine is built to do. And so, hopefully we'll be able to see more realistic character animations as we get further and deeper into the next generation of consoles. I really did like what I saw, but I mean, as a believer in Christ who wants to prioritize the things that I'm passionate about and wants to keep my hype in check and not get carried away and fall in love with the things of the world, I do want to kind of like check my emotions and not let my imagination get out of hand and start putting my hype and my hope in a thing, you know. So what I'll say is I did enjoy what I saw, and I enjoy the idea of being able to play games that look like this and behave like this. I did think for much of the demo that it all looked a bit convenient, you know. There was a crawl space that the character was moving through that is famously used in video games to hide basically loading of environments, that they force you to slow down your exploration so that they can catch up with loading the environment you're about to enter into. And in general, the third-person controlled character was moving slowly through the environment. But I think they did that on purpose for skeptical people like me, because at the very end of the demo, it opened up to the outside. I almost said open world, but I doubt they really built a full open world environment in the way we think of it. But they opened it up to this huge open horizon looking environment, and then the third-person character leaps off this cliff and starts flying rapidly through this canyon, through these environments that all have rocks falling and going everywhere, so all kinds of moving parts and things that are moving by really fast. And so I think that was their way of showing the computational power, the data retrieval speed of this engine and of the hardware that it will be running on, and the potential that has for the games that are made in the future. Now, I am still skeptical because this is just a tech demo. It's a quote-unquote game, but it's made specifically for this purpose, to do this little specific demo, you know. The engine is launching in 2021, so we're not going to see games made in this engine for likely a couple of years, maybe longer, before games are actually optimized well enough to look as good as this demo did. But it was still cool to see the potential future that that could be coming to video games. Let's see here. This it's noteworthy to mention that these are the first visuals we've seen of anything running on PS5, whether it's an actual game or not. This is the first time we've seen anything running on a PS5, and again, I thought it looked fine, thought it looked cool. I did notice it being a step up, but, you know, I was watching on a 1080p monitor on YouTube. But more than visuals, again, I want advancements that bring more than visual fidelity. You know, if I watch a black and white movie on a vacuum tube TV, it's still going to have characters that look and move and behave more realistically than any human beings I've seen in video games. So it's not about just the sharpness of the picture and the fidelity of the colors. It's about how the things that are being simulated actually behave and how closely they actually simulate their real-world counterparts in their behavior. So that's what I want to see a whole lot more of. The potential of that was talked about here, but you know, we're not going to know if we'll actually get it for, I think, a while to come. But, you know, it was interesting. This is the first of anything that we've gotten from Sony in a while. Xbox has been very vocal and done lots of things talking about their new upcoming console. Compared to that, Sony has been almost silent for months. And so seeing this was cool, to see something from Sony, but it doesn't get me leaning more toward them than I already was. Hopefully this is just a small move on their part to get our attention for a real showcase from them that they will be announcing soon. We'll see. That's all from me for now. Stay tuned from now through at least July, based on some of the announcements that have been made. I'll be bringing more of my reactions to what I'm calling UN-E3 2020. Meanwhile, I'd love to hear what you think of what we've seen so far in the comments below. And then I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.
christiangeekcentral.com